Hey y'all, it's Coco.
It's your boy Q.
Welcome to our channel. We are in 20.
That's only gonna forever be corny. We're gonna figure something out though.
Whatever. Anyway, so we are well within 2021.
Yes.
There have been some crazy things going on with 2021.
Too many already.
But hopefully that will, this is it, and we can start. We can really start 2021 now instead of like January 1st. So now 2021 has officially begun.
I can't.
Happy New Year again. So this video we are going to talk about just communication, right? We talked about it a couple of videos ago. We talked about how important it is to be able to communicate with your spouse. And me.
If you haven't watched that video, go check it out.
Yes, go check it out. I believe it is the how parents influence or how families influence our marriage. So I can link those videos in the description. You should check them out. But so me and Quentin have very different communication styles, and we have we're like the opposite when it comes to processing, how we process things.
Facts.
So we felt like it took a while for us to figure out how to communicate with each other. First as just a regular dating couple, and then again as we got married and like lived together, and so it was almost like a relearning process. So we figured we would try to help you guys take out a lot of the guesswork that we had to go through, and kind of make this video for you. We do want to put out a disclaimer. We're not marriage counselors or anything like that by any means.
Facts.
So while this is stuff that worked for us, it may not work for you. This is just kind of to throw some ideas out there on what you can do to make communication smoother for you. So since we've done that, so how would you describe your communication style?
I think communication usually starts with like the way you process information. So the way I process information is internally. If I have an issue or if something's going on and I need to process what's going on, I do that internally in my own mind first. I can give a million reasons of why I do it that way, but just to like make that clear, that's how I process information. I process it internally. With that being said, when I communicate, I cannot always communicate something in the moment that it happens because I haven't had a chance to process it yet. So my communication style is one of like, let it sit, let it settle, let me think it over, and then let's readdress it at a time in which I've had a chance to process things. So that's kind of my communication style. I try to also implement certain things. Number one, always listen first. Listen first, and then speak. And I don't mean that in a step sense. I mean that in a priority sense. So, if somebody's telling me something, my job is to listen and understand what they're telling me first before I address it. Often enough, I think it's our human nature and internal and instinct to listen to something and immediately address it. But when we listen, we're just hearing. We're thinking of a response while somebody's telling us something. You know what I mean? And that if you're trying to formulate a response while somebody's telling you something, you're not focused in on what they're telling you completely. So one of the other things about my communication is to always listen and process. If somebody tells me something, I'm not sitting there trying to figure out a response. I'm listening to what they're doing. I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm trying to figure out what their purpose is or I'm trying to understand them. And once I come to an understanding, my first thing might be asking questions rather than giving a response. And then, so that's something I try to practice in my communication style too. What about you, Courtney?
So I am an external processor. So I talk things out in order to kind of figure out how I feel. Not necessarily for validation, but just that sometimes my mind is going a million miles a minute. And so if I don't say and kind of try to put to word what I'm thinking, then it's just gonna be, it's like jumbled. So I'm a talker. I process through talking. I talk a lot anyway. So roots.
I ain't do nothing.
I process through talking, and when I speak, so I think it's so, one thing that I realized about the way that I communicate, especially because I ended up being surrounded by introverted people, especially in college and my adult life, I find some of my close friends are introverted. And so what that can come off as, and this may be a cultural thing too, is that I'm used to a household where, like, my mother's kind of an ambivert. So she's an internal processor, but when she's around the family, she could be extroverted and talkative. And so we kind of build conversations. So whereas I may say something, and then if my father, agrees or has input, he'll add it, and then we'll build that way. So I'll respond, he'll respond, blah, blah, blah. And I realized with Quentin, when we got together, I would try to do that with him, but he was like, stop cutting me off. And I was like, whoa, but I'm not. But to people who aren't used to that type of communication style, it may seem that way, where it's like, oh, you don't build conversation the same way that I do. That's interesting. So yeah, I feel like that was kind of one of the first things, kind of, not necessarily that we argued about, but just like, you used to always think I was cutting you off. And I was just like, no, this is how I talk. This is how I grew up talking.
Yeah, it sounded like, I guess in that sense, and well, so is that, do you have anything else to say about your communication style?
No.
Okay, so I guess this would be a good segue into like how
Conflict.
how our conversation styles and how we communicated with each other conflicted, and some of the issues that we had early on. So like she was saying, at the beginning, because she has to talk out her ideas and what's in her head. With that being the case, that means often enough, if something comes up in her mind, she says it right away. And that did feel like she was cutting me off, because it didn't give me time to process what she said beforehand, nor what I wanted to say in response. And so a lot of times that would cause me to shut down and not say anything. And then I just became okay, yeah, sure. I was a yeah, sure, like, and not even like in a yes man sort of sense, because it wasn't usually in something to do.
No,
it
wasn't.
It was usually in forms of like maybe making decisions about the relationship, or
emotionally sharing.
Yeah, like emotionally sharing things or opinions about stuff. So it could be small or it could be big, but at a point I was just like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I feel you. Okay. Man, that's crazy. Like it was those sorts of responses. And so it took us, having another conversation about how we kind of communicate and process information. And I will say that I think, it's been a long time since that happened, earlier on in our relationship.
Yeah.
I want to accredit the notice to Courtney. I want to say that she kind of realized the differences there, and we had to talk about it. And so, what were some of the other conflicts that you think that you maybe noticed or saw?
I mean, if we just like just on the regular day-to-day stuff, so we get into a disagreement, I want to talk it out right then and there, because that's how I process. Like, I need to talk it out. He needs a day or two, and that used to piss me off so much, because I need to talk about it, because all it's gonna do in my mind, nothing is, for one, I like having resolution, and then for two, it's just like in my mind, just kind of bouncing around. My emotions aren't like if I don't articulate how I'm feeling verbally, then it's just all over and I'm in my chest all the time.
And what's funny is I don't like responding when I'm in my chest. But in the moment, I'm in my chest the most out of any other time during like a conflict. So if there's a conflict, if we have something that we don't agree on, I'm gonna be in my chest, I'm gonna be in my emotions at the most in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that reason, I might say something that I don't necessarily mean, because I'm just saying it out of anger or out of frustration or out of being upset or sad or whatever the case. And so I need that time so that I can calm down and I can really think logically through what's going on and either say, hey, you know, and it's not even necessarily about being right or wrong, it's just being able to like
Right.
logically say like, okay,
This is what I'm feeling.
This is what is going on.
Right.
And sometimes you say stuff, and sometimes when you're communicating, you say stuff out of being hurt or whatever
Right.
the emotion is, but that you don't actually mean, or you say stuff that you come back to it later.
And you're like, that's not quite.
He's like, that's not quite what I meant to express.
Yeah.
And so I had done that before, and I don't like doing that, and so that's why I need that time.
No, I feel that.
And so, you know, I think Courtney did a really good job at adjusting, and I tried to adjust to it. I guess you can vet whether or not I did well.
I think, yeah, I think you did.
I mean, that's good to
I feel
know.
like I would say that.
But yeah, so it took that time to just like realize that about each other. And once you realize that about each other, depending on what it is, sometimes I'll go ahead and talk about it in the moment and just try to think through it as we're having a conversation. And sometimes she'll give me the time to process.
Yeah.
And I think what's nice, too, is that because we're making those adjustments to each other, if something is said, we don't always hold it against each other if we change our mind. And I think that's a big thing about communication. If we're having a talk about something and we're talking in the moment and I say something, then I come back and be like, I don't really mean that. She doesn't hold that against me, because she knows that if I might have had time to think about it instead of talking about it right now, I might have came to that conclusion a little bit later. And so that's one thing you have to do too when you're communicating is be forgiving. And people can change. They can change opinions, ideas. You know, they don't have to always live and die by what they said at that moment. And giving people that grace to change and grow is really, really important in that too.
And I think a lot of it, so much, and just thinking about it now, so much of communication is based on trust. Because I think part of the reason why I used to freak out when we were first, like early, was because it was like, okay, well, if we don't talk about it now and get out what we're feeling now, then I might get a call tomorrow morning saying, I'm done with you, or I may leave. And so I just thought about that. And so like, after a year, after a year of arguing because y'all don't know how to talk, you get tired of it anyway. But like, you get tired of like, okay, something has to change. But I think as I got more kind of comfortable and settled with our relationship and marriage, honestly, and how like, oh, he's not gonna just dip just because we don't disagree, we don't agree on something, And so I became like, not only did I realize it was just a part of how you function, because in the past, whenever people would get real absent or take time, then it's because they were on their way out the door. I just realized that as I'm talking. It's external processor. I just realized that as I'm talking it out. I think early on, I was like, okay, well, if I give him too much space, he's gonna dip. And so now that it's like, well, no, he's here. So now I can kind of like, okay, I can give him his space to like, to process, because he's not, he's not going anywhere. And I think, and so I was like, well, if I keep him here, if we talk about it now, if we get it out our chest now. If we
talk about it now, you're gonna lose. That was the reality, which is funny, because honestly, I think if we would have continued that way,
we wouldn't have made. Oh, we would not have made.
Definitely would have.
We were long distance for the first 4 years of our relationship, because I was
at school
2 hours away, and so learning how to communicate became vital to us, because the only time that we, until you were old enough that you could come visit more often, talking on the phone or Skype was the
Uvu. Boy, y'all remember Uvu, bro? OOVOO.
We just aged ourselves, but
I'm dead.
Everybody
under 16 like Uvu.
Uvu. What is a Uvu? Everybody under 20 is like Uvu.
Everybody under 21 like Uvu.
But like, you know, communication became so vital and became the lifeblood. It's the lifeblood of any relationship, but it really becomes the lifeblood if you're long distance and you don't get to see each other.
Right.
So a lot of those other reassurances that you would have, the touching, the being present, you don't have that. Yeah. Communication is all you have.
Right.
And so it forced us to really get introspective and be like, all right, what is this? And then with InterVarsity, the Christian ministry that I was in college, we were big on Myers-Briggs, we were big on introvert versus extrovert, we were big on a lot of those personality types and communication styles because we were dealing with so many different types of people. And when you're trying to minister to people, you need to know how to minister to people that are different than you. That was something that I really realized. I was like, okay, I'm an external processor. I talk things out. I figure things out as I'm talking. Mm-hmm. He's not. Mm-hmm. I have to give him space to do that. And I think part of it too was I had to be like, okay, I have to give him space to do that. Mm-hmm. And if it gets to the point where that means that we end up breaking up because of it, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And so again, that trust, instead of this time, it was just trusting God with whatever we were gonna be.
Yeah.
And so that was I was able to kind of give you the space for you to do things the way that you have to do them. And I was processed with a friend. I'll go call one of my friends and be like, girl, let me know if I'm tripping.
Yeah. And
we'll talk about and we'll just talk and process. And by the time we talk again, I'll just have the conversation. So that was something. That's the value of having godly counsel and of having, especially godly counsel and godly friends of the same sex, because I've never felt really comfortable going to guys for relationship issues, but that's because the whole if a person, a guy may be looking for a way in or whatever. So I try not to give people space to do that. So my girlfriends, I usually go to and we talk and process. And they're, Lord is blessed to where we have very honest friendships, to where if I'm tripping, they'll be like, girl, you tripping,
Yeah, I think, which leads me to, I guess, another segment. So we kind of talked about the conflict. So what was some of the things that helped us? So we said, just kind of realizing that, one, addressing how we communicate, but two, having counsel.
Right. Having a closely trusted counsel.
One that's going to be right, because there's going to be some people out there that's always going to tell you, no, you good.
Mm-hmm. But not the yes men. You don't need yes men.
You don't need yes men.
They are
need
not
somebody who's going to be real with you. Which leads me, I guess, kind of to a third thing about communication is you got to put the pride to the side.
Woo!
You cannot be a good communicator and be prideful.
You can't.
You just can't.
You can't.
You can't. Because at the end of the day, we're all growing. We're all imperfect. And because of that, sometimes you're just wrong.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta apologize.
You're just wrong.
And sometimes nobody's wrong.
Yeah. And sometimes nobody's
it's
wrong.
just different.
It's just a difference. And you have to be able to accept the differences.
Yeah.
You have to be able to realize that there are differences and there's nothing wrong about being different from each other. There are plenty of things that are different between me and Courtney that we just chop up to being different. And I think we learn to appreciate those about each other over the course of time too, because then once you can do that, you actually start using it to your advantage. You can start planning things out better, and you can start, when you're married.
Right.
I don't know, especially when you're married, because, you're going to have strengths and weaknesses that the other partner doesn't have, and you're going to have to learn how to use those to, run your household. Yeah. And so, but you have to leave that pride aside, and you have to be willing to approach every conversation or every, conflict with the mindset that coming out of this, I'm not trying to be right.
Right.
Coming out of this, I'm not trying to pull her down coming out of this, I want both of us to be up. And if that means that I might have to sacrifice an idea that I had, or I might have to sacrifice, something like we all grow up with things that we learn, and I might have to unlearn something. She's done a lot of unlearning. I've done a lot of unlearning. And it's the compromise and the willingness to change and grow that I think attributes to one of our biggest successes, being able to communicate with each other. So that's another thing I would say is make sure to leave that pride to the side.
Yeah.
It's not gonna help you. Trust me. It's nothing to it. It's nothing that's gonna be in that's gonna get you to the other side, and you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm glad I went in there and just was unbudging and didn't move a lick.
Because then you're right, and then y'all mad at each other and still not talking to them.
Then what? So, and that's one thing too, and I guess I'll put this little caveat in there. It's one thing that if you have something that is unnegotiable as far as being with each other, if you're like in an argument and there's just something unnegotiable, and you come to the conclusion that it's not necessarily wrong or right, there's nothing necessarily wrong or right about it, it's just an unnegotiable for you because however you feel about it, then that's okay. And sometimes that just means that person's not right for you. Like, there are plenty of non-negotiables that me and Courtney talked about, and we were like, okay, this is a non-negotiable for you, and she wasn't willing to budge on it. And there was some non-negotiables for me that I wasn't willing to budge on. Yeah. And then you got to come to each other, and you got to learn how to communicate what those are, and you have to learn how to be able to say, you know what, I can live up to those, or you know what, I can't live up to those. It's been a great ride,
right?
But you're just not meant for me, and that's okay. And we'll be sad for a little bit, and we'll get over it and find the right person later. But prayerfully. But you have to learn how to communicate about that too.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I think as we get to, I guess, our fourth and final thing is resolution. So you have to resolve stuff. You can't leave things open-ended, because all you're gonna do is have the same issues come up over and over and over and over and over again. You're gonna be like, why do we keep arguing about the same stuff? And it's like, because you haven't resolved anything. So it's like, we kind of live by the whole don't go to bed angry thing, or don't let the sun go down on your anger, if you want to use scriptural references. But it's important at the very least, even if it's a, you know what, we can talk about this and set a date, if not today. Yeah. Like, we'll talk about this tomorrow. We'll talk about this when I get home from work Tuesday. Like something that lets the other person know that you're not just cutting and leaving. But being like, we're gonna talk about this. This is important. It shows that this is important to you. Yeah. And that it's a priority for you. And you come up with a resolution, whether that be a compromise, whether someone is right and wrong and the wrong person concedes and admits to that. But there has to be some sort of resolution. Yeah. And resolution doesn't just mean the argument is over. Right. That's where the work begins. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So if the resolution is, I'm gonna try to clean up more, then after that, not saying you have to clean up immediately, but yeah, the next day, maybe you should look at what you can clean, or like if the issue is, I don't like the way that you talk to me, then you start doing the work and start thinking about, okay, how can I address this thing better? Yeah. So. And
I think to add to that, as far as, communicating and coming up with a resolution when you communicate, be practical about it.
Yeah.
Give room.
Grace. Yeah. You have to be patient. Changes do not happen
and not even
in a week.
Right. and not even and in that sense, give grace. And I was even gonna say like give grace or give room for practical changes to take place. And so when I say that, if you take the cleaning up example, if you're having a conversation and you arguing that you don't clean enough, you come to the resolution that you're gonna clean more. Don't start by saying, all right, I'm gonna clean the whole house. No, because that's not something that you're coming out of.
Right.
I'ma clean the kitchen counter that has all our mail on it and junk that we brought into the house from the car. Start off small. Like, I'ma do laundry, even if you don't usually do laundry, or I'm gonna wipe down all the mirrors in the house. Like, it doesn't.
Right.
It
doesn't have to be this huge.
Right. It don't have to be something huge. And I think when you are communicating, and you do come to resolutions, sometimes those resolutions make it seem like they have to be so significant or big.
Right.
And
sometimes just showing effort. Like,
yeah.
Don't underestimate the value of showing effort. Like, it means a lot, because even with us, a lot of times if I would just see that he's making an effort to change, like, that would cause me to be more gracious when he did make a misstep, because I see that you're trying, and I know that change doesn't happen immediately, but the fact that you're trying, like, all right, we could go somewhere with effort. So that's all that we have for you guys today.
We hope that helped.
Thank you so much for tuning in.
I appreciate you as always.
And we will see you guys next week. Peace.